If the EV market grows as expected, we will need every kilo. And the more independent Europe is, the better it is.
Welcome to a special episode of the Taiwanology podcast. This is your host, Kwangyin. Today, we're taking you on a journey to Germany to explore the nation's ambitious efforts to establish its own EV battery supply chain. We'll delve into the challenges Germany faces and the lessons Taiwan can learn from its experience. Electric vehicles, or EVs, are in high demand globally, with the US and the European Union heavily investing in decarbonization. EVs are pivotal for reducing carbon emissions. To meet its climate goals, the EU aims to produce at least 12 million new EVs annually by 2030, a significant leap from its current capacity. But what will power these electric cars? A single Tesla Model S requires over 3,000 lithium-ion batteries, which equates to about 350 kilograms of lithium, which is a light silvery metal essential for making rechargeable batteries in electric vehicles and many electronic devices such as mobile phones. So, where does all this lithium come from? Currently, 85% of battery-grade lithium is sourced from China or Chinese-owned companies. This heavy reliance has sparked concerns in the EU about potential disruptions in the global battery supply chain. However, Europe is actively working to change this dynamic.
Europe could end its dependence on lithium-ion batteries from China by the year 2027. That is according to a study by the industry group Transport and Environment. It says that previous investment in battery plants could set the continent up to produce all the components needed for its future vehicle production. The biggest risk.
One German company is challenging the status quo by committing to produce the critical cathode for EV batteries within Europe. In May, I traveled to SaxonyAnhalt, an industrial hub in the former East Germany, where I met with Sabine Kraus. She works for the regional government.
I'm the press officer of the investment and marketing corporation SaxonyAnhalt, and we care about the investment and the location of companies in SaxonyAnhalt.
Sabine picked me up from the train station, which is a little bit over 2 hours away from Berlin. The town of Bitterfeld has a rather colorful history, according to her.
Bitterfeld was an important center of industry also in GDR times.
And what kind of industry in particular?
Chemicals. The traditional chemical park in Bitterfeld is over 100 years old, so they have a long tradition in industry. And mostly about chemical industry.
Yeah.
Bitterfeld was part of a former East Germany's chemical triangle, producing rubber, fertilizers, and later on solar panels over the past decades.
What you can see is these pipelines.
Yeah.
We have several chemical parks in Saxony-Anhalt. It's called the chemical triangle. It goes down to Leuna and Zeitz in the south, and they are connected by a pipeline.
Now, Bitterfeld is embracing a new era of chemical engineering, refining lithium hydroxide, a crucial component for the cathodes in lithium batteries that power electric cars.
I'm Andre Majdelani. I'm Global Director Marketing and Sales for AMG Lithium since February 2021.
Andre Majdelani works for AMG Lithium, a German company headquartered in Frankfurt that specializes in lithium extraction and refining. I'm here at their lithium refinery in Bitterfeld, the first of its kind in Europe. My fascination with lithium really began in early 2023 during a visit to northern Chile, home to the world's largest lithium reserves. I was on a quest to uncover the source of this essential ingredient for the batteries that power our everyday lives. So what does this refining facility do? Before lithium can be used in batteries, it must be refined to a super high purity exceeding 99%. This process is incredibly advanced. However, here's the catch. Today, nearly 90% of the world's lithium hydroxide production capacity is concentrated in China. The COVID pandemic has highlighted the risks of overdependence on China for critical raw materials. That's why AMG Lithium is building Europe's first battery-grade refinery here in Germany. And I'm here hoping to find out what it takes to achieve battery sovereignty so that Taiwan can one day do the same. Sounds promising, right? I followed Andre into the half-completed facility, unaware that I was in for a surprise.
This is the south building. All the pellets will arrive here.
Here's Andre explaining the process, complete with some background noise to set the scene.
So the process itself, first we dissolve here, then it's diluted because the next step, the next physical chemical step, we need a dilution. Yeah? Okay. It's an ion exchange. It's not a secret. Yeah? Right. For that you need a lower concentration. Later, when the material has been so-called filtered and it goes into the crystallizer, there again you have to take water out. You have to concentrate it. You wanted to have some noise.
Yes, noise is good.
So, and then it goes through a thin film evaporator, where it is concentrated again such that it makes sense to crystallize.
I see.
That's just a very brief...
Andre here is understandably enthusiastic and proud of this groundbreaking venture, as it is the first of its kind in Europe.
AMG Lithium is the newest endeavor of the biggest mother company, AMG Critical Materials. And the company has had ambitious plans since 2 decades to develop products and solutions to reduce CO2 emissions or avoid these emissions. And the latest endeavor is to go deeper into the field of lithium. And the company owns a mine in Brazil, and this is the starting point.
A lithium mine in Brazil.
Spodumene mine, yes.
Okay, so that's rock mining or salar?
This is hard rock. No, this
Okay,
is hard rock mining, and the mine has been operating since 1945. Initially, it was a tin mine. Then later, they found they have tantalum, so they started mining both in parallel. And in 1917, when the importance of lithium became that clear and that the market would grow, etc., they decided to look at the tailings because they knew they had lithium. So they developed a process to mine tin, tantalum, and lithium at the same time.
So as he was explaining, AMG, Andre's company, has specialized in tin mining for decades. In 2017, with the rapid growth of the EV industry, AMG ventured into the lithium business, a market currently dominated by China.
Our current wish is really to integrate Europe upstream. In Europe, the industry, the e-mobility is being built the other way around. Normally you would start, you have raw materials, you do your hydroxide, you do your batteries, you do your car manufacturing. But in Europe, we're coming a bit later. We are transforming our combustion engine manufacturers into EV manufacturers. Yeah, they have to compete, so they have to replace and use their sites to produce combustion engines and turn these into EV manufacturers. Yeah, so that's there already because the sites are built, and now we have to take it upstream. So upstream means all the way to the battery, cell, cathode manufacturer. The next step is us. Yeah. So we want to secure the whole supply chain all the way to the mine.
Why going upstream is so important at this moment for you?
Well, to secure your raw materials. If you are completely dependent from third parties, mostly overseas, you go a lot of risks. Mm-hmm. And we all know who currently has this biggest share of conversion. Mm-hmm. That's still today more than 85%.
Yes. He meant China.
And we need to build parallel streams. We're all depending on the same
right.
conversion.
But this realization...
In the past, Andre had frequently traveled to Brussels to urge EU officials to prioritize the security of critical raw materials like lithium, often feeling frustrated by the lack of attention, until more and more people realize this overdependence on China for critical raw materials is risky for Europe's EV future.
When do you think this realization happened?
I've been active in the European Union for a year now. I've been going to Brussels, talking to politicians, talking to lawmakers, etc. I think what the current legislation did is more than anyone else did for the European Union in the past 20 years. Raw materials have been neglected for very long. Everything's looked fine. We were getting what we wanted at a relatively decent price. Nobody was really looking at it. But now we see, first, an unnatural growth. The electromobility is growing at a pace you don't find any other industries growing that far. The lithium availability, I mean, it took us 100 years to come to the 700,000 tons where we are now. And if we want to really have the quantities everybody foresees built in terms of new EVs every year, we will need 3 million tons of LCEs. LCEs means lithium carbonate equivalent. It's the same denominator, whether you're talking about metal, about hydroxide, we say LCEs, lithium carbonate equivalent.
So you're talking about the volume we need is 300?
Would be, at the end of a decade, we would be looking at 3 million tons of LCVs. Currently we are at 700, exactly.
Okay. So that's how many times?
3.5 times.
Okay, 3.5 times by year 2030.
Even more, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you say you've been going to like Brussels and other governments, trying to educate them about the importance of critical raw materials, and you will have been ignored for a long time.
I mean, raw materials, not me. Raw materials, yes, raw materials have been ignored. They were there.
To achieve its climate goals, the EU will need 3.5 times more lithium supply. Relying solely on China for all battery material needs is not a viable option.
But with the geopolitical tensions, with the recognition that we are too dependent on, let's say, two little sources, there's one big one and maybe a parallel stream, but China has 85% of the conversion capacity.
Right. So why do you think raw materials have been ignored in the past?
They were available.
They were always available.
There was enough.
Right.
There were these geopolitical tensions that we have today. So it's easy, you can find them. And also the OEMs, the car manufacturers thought there's enough. But now they are becoming cautious and anxious to have enough.
So when this refinery reaches its full capacity as expected, how many percentage of the lithium hydroxide demand of Europe can this facility fulfill?
If I come back to, let's say, what the European had set itself as targets, and we're talking about 500,000 tons, we have space for 5 modules. Each would be designed to produce 20,000 tons per year. So if we manage somewhere early the 30s, I mean in the early next decade, because things are slowing down a little bit right now, we could reach 100,000 tons. 100,000 tons is 20% of the 500,000 that will be required. So every fifth car could be running on lithium hydroxide processed at AMG.
So 1 in 5 EVs will use their battery cathode material. Sounds great, right? When we return from the break, we'll take a tour of the factory and explore why achieving this independence is so challenging. Now we're back with Andre Majdelani in the German city of Bitterfeld, at what is going to be Europe's very first battery-grade lithium refinery, as we discuss why this is such an important venture for the continent.
Okay, and with our refinery here for Europe, there's a lot of advantage. There's security of supply. You are much closer to your producer. Mm-hmm. Suppose you're relying on someone who's 10,000 kilometers away. We've seen it, geo instability, etc. You're never prone to all these things. So to have a local security of supply is always good. If the market, the EV market, grows as expected, we will need every kilo. And the more independent Europe is, the better it is.
It's clear that Europe wants to seek greater independence in securing critical raw materials like lithium. However, as I discovered on site, building this supply chain from scratch is far from easy.
And who makes the technical grade lithium hydroxide?
For now, it's coming from China
Okay.
and from other, like the open market, as Andre was saying before.
Right. Okay. Because I was asking where the technical grade lithium hydroxide is coming from.
Either from our partner who currently turns our spodumene into technical grade or from the market.
Okay. And they're still producing in Asia?
Yeah.
So that's still a little bit
Yes,
dependent.
absolutely. We are looking at building our own conversion capacity in Brazil.
I see. So that would be the next step.
We would like to have whichever mine we work with, we would like the mine to also convert. We will do everything to support them to do that.
For the time being, it looks like AMG will need to rely on Chinese suppliers for a bit longer. Another pressing question of mine is whether AMG is receiving adequate support from the EU or the German government. Unfortunately, the answer is not really. Andre revealed that for this 130 million euro project, they have only received 4 million euros in subsidies from the local government. Why is that? I asked Jacob Gunther, senior analyst on economy at Merix, a leading Berlin think tank specializing in China.
So in general, Europe has done a good job of getting on the same page that something needs to be done. They have not done a very good job about what they're actually going to do.
Europe aspires to become independent from China regarding critical raw materials like battery-grade lithium. However, Jacob believes that achieving this goal will take longer and more resources than previously anticipated.
Well, basically, there are strong disagreements around Europe about what kind of measures are and are not acceptable in order to basically create the conditions necessary to either onshore and localize production of these critical raw materials or to friendshore them to friendly markets that are not so concentrated in China.
To understand how Taiwan fares at this battle to increase battery sovereignty, I talked to Mark Liu, a senior researcher at a think tank that belongs to Taiwan's Industrial Technology Research Institute.
I would say that for the upstream material, most of the time in Taiwan, we try to do the business, try to do the manufacturing activity, not only in Taiwan local. We also try to create some of the factories in China. So in the past decades, in Taiwan, we have some cathode material supplier and anode material company which getting involved in China, which sets their factories and production lines in China too.
I see. Okay. So you're saying that up until now, a lot of Taiwanese companies that are involved in the lithium battery supply chain are still doing a lot of business in China, but they are starting to diversify at the request of the customers.
Most of the time, they will try to fit the end user's requirements. Since from the Apple, HPs, and all the IT application company, they will have their idea, try to do and separate the whole supply chains in the world. So not only in China, even in India or Southeast Asia is also one of the targets the end user will consider to set the new factory.
So it sounds like the companies are really trying to build a global supply chain of lithium-ion batteries that's outside of China.
Sometimes the end user and the end customer, which would like to request every supply content and products exceeds China, which means that except China, if you have any other factories which can provide the same TP ratios products, of course, it's positive to use as well before. But related about the Chinese manufacturing, if your products, even for the Taiwanese company, if your products produced and made in China, sometimes they will have some different idea which would like to request to move for the other country for the future, certain of the future of the manufacturing.
And I think that's going to be challenging for a lot of companies.
It needs to take time to do the new facilities, not only for the cell manufacturing, even for the upstream of the battery material manufacturing. But it's still worth to do it, since if there are more and more business has become and go back to the localized manufacturing. Thinking about the North American and Europe, they all have their idea in long term of the electric vehicle and battery supply chain restructure.
Restructuring global supply chain will require significant time and resources, whether it's through reshoring or friendshoring. Which won't come cheap, especially in a high inflation environment like the one we're in now. The next question consumers should consider is, how much more are we willing to pay for an electric vehicle made entirely in Europe, or in our case, in Taiwan? As for Taiwan, despite its strong tech industry and expertise in semiconductor manufacturing, the country has actually invested little in securing critical raw materials like lithium. Very few Taiwanese companies have ventured into the upstream battery material sector, which highlights the supply chain risks if Taiwan wants to build more EVs. To reduce these risks, Taiwan must consider strategic investments and partnerships to ensure a stable supply of essential materials for future technologies. This is just the beginning of the story. That wraps up today's episode. If you enjoyed this podcast, please take a moment to leave a review or shoot us an email. To read more in-depth reports on the battle for lithium in Chile and Taiwan, check out CommonWealth's English website. Our next episode will be available August 13th. This show is produced by Weiru Wang. I'm your host, Liu Guangyin. Follow Taiwanology wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time.